What is going on, everybody? This is Andrew from DeFiancy. All right, guys, we're just going to jump straight into this. So we are about 2 hours from the New York close. We are looking at Bitcoin here. It's sitting at about 44K. If you remember correctly, in the last video, we talked about this vertical accumulation pattern that was taking place and how it was likely to break up. And what do you know? That's what we have here. And I think it's now time to start thinking about, is this thing due for a pullback? It didn't seem likely that it was going to pull back when it was grinding here. And if you caught that trade, if you had the guts to get in, congratulations, because that was a really nice move. And altcoins have done pretty well, but really this has been a Bitcoin dominance rally, meaning Bitcoin has been going up substantially versus the overall altcoin market. Now, I think you're going to start to see that going forward, but that kind of tells you a little bit about where we are in the cycle. And I think people need to also, when looking at this price action, and trying to say, okay, how much room do we have left? A lot of this is obviously, or most of this is about the ETF, right? People are trying to front run an institutional entry into crypto. Now, I'm super bullish on crypto. If you know me, you know I'm a perma bull when it comes to crypto. Now, I do believe, though, from a trading perspective, if I'm going to be objective, this is where you want to start to get a little cautious. We've had a really nice move from the lows, and this thing has not really pulled back at all. I mean, you had a couple of pullbacks here in this accumulation zone, or this vertical accumulation pre-breakout zone, and that was it. And at some point, you're left with too many people, that are buyers, you're left with too many people who will be future sellers and not enough buyers. Now, are we there yet? I don't necessarily think we're there. I'm just saying at this point, this is when you need to start to pay attention and be a little bit more careful on Bitcoin. Now, I think altcoins and ETH have a pretty good shot of continuing to go because they haven't really broken out yet. I mean, you'll see what I mean when we go over some of these charts that alts haven't really started. As crazy as that sounds, Bitcoin, on the other hand, it's definitely starting to get going. I still think this is very early for Bitcoin because I think this is going to be trading at 500K, 250K, and not that long. I think it only takes a few years to get above, probably 200K or more. But in the short term, clearly this thing is probably due for a pullback. Now, where would I look for a pullback? Where would I look to enter if there was a pullback? Because I'm not shorting this market. Okay, all because I say, be careful or, start to, use a little bit more risk management maybe. Doesn't mean that I'm bearish. I'm just saying from a trading standpoint, it would probably be wise to secure some sort of profits here at around this 45K level. I do think there's a good chance that it just keeps going to 50 or higher. I don't know where this thing will top out, to be honest, because it's hard to say how much FOMO we will get. If we get new capital in over the next few weeks leading up to the ETF, it can push to all-time high. As crazy as that may sound, there's nothing stopping this thing from just keep going if people start to, if new capital's entering the market. That's the requirement. But I do believe that based off what I'm seeing, a lot of this is the same capital that's been around. Okay, now that's a double-edged sword there when you have this BTC dominance rally, because we had talked about how Bitcoin's moving aggressively versus alts. That's not a bad thing per se, but if you don't have new capital moving in, what likely happens is a pretty significant amount of that capital will look for better opportunities in altcoins, and it will naturally bleed versus alts. I don't think we're quite there. Things look pretty good on every time frame. I'm by no means saying this is bearish, but I'm expecting a pullback and a rotation into altcoins. Basically, the minute this thing flushes down and then starts to consolidate, you're still arguably in this uptrend from this expansion here. I mean, this doesn't look bad at all. So maybe it pushes higher. Maybe it pushes up to 50. We'll see. But again, caution on Bitcoin. I wouldn't be going all in here. And I think the better opportunities are going to be ETH and altcoins going into the ETF. Now, it could be that Bitcoin just rallies all the way into the ETF with no pullback. That just seems a little bit unlikely. Obviously, it's not a great short either until you get through that ETF. So this is one of the reasons why I think this is such a powerful rally. Is we had talked about this in previous videos, how there's really not a reason for people to be short. It's just not logical to sell a lot before the ETF when that's probably when you get most of your volume. So big whales will like to sell into maximum strength, and that's more likely to be probably days after the ETF or the day the ETF is passed, something like that. So don't be surprised if this just keeps going. But again, short term, expecting a pullback. Medium term, it's like I'm neutral on that, and of course, longer term, this is going way, way higher in my opinion. 100K plus, I think, by probably mid 2024, or after the halving, I guess. So that's a little bit more than mid 2024. So I think by November 2024, December 2024, we're probably going to be trading closer to 100K. That's just my personal opinion. I don't know why it would really wait once people realize, basically once people realize how explosive Bitcoin is after the halving. Typically, it will get front run to a certain extent. Institutions will have the ability to enter in via the ETF. You could see how this pushes way, way higher. So very, very bright future for Bitcoin going into 2025, I think. Now, let's talk about some of these altcoins. Okay, so one of the winners right now is AVAX, and we have been talking about AVAX for weeks now, how it's going to be one of these fast horses. And the reason why is because it's destroyed, partially. So a lot of these altcoins are running so hard right now. One of the main reasons isn't really fundamentals necessarily. It's just because they're down 90, 80%. And people are like, I want to buy something at a discount, and this has a lot of upside if the rest of the crypto market catches a bid, right? Sometimes it's that simple. It's like these things are cheap, relatively speaking. And, Bitcoin's retraced like over 50% of its move from to the downside. And then you have these altcoins that haven't even really gotten started yet. So let me just show you this on a log scale, or on a linear scale. Okay, this is Avalanche. So people are wondering, why are these things moving so aggressively? It's because they got destroyed. Okay, that's one of the things you need to understand about this market. This thing was down 90% at the bottom and sat there for a year going sideways. Okay, that's whales accumulating. Okay, and now you have people chasing the price up, but look where this thing still is. It's still down like 80%. It's not hard to see how this thing just keeps pushing higher. Okay, so anyway, I'm distracted because my phone's ringing in the back. So that's AVAX there. So next time, and I'm mentioning this thing's being down still a lot, to try to, I think people need to rewire their brains here. They have to change their perspective on this. They see this big move and they're like, wow, this thing is way too, aggressive. People are getting greedy. It's still down 80%. And you have to look at it like that, I think, because that's how bigger whales are going, that have not entered into these crypto positions. That's how they're going to see it. It doesn't mean that it was worth whatever market cap it was at $120. This is really just game theory, psychology. They're buying something at a discount still. This is how I look at it. So don't expect, in my opinion, for this to stay around here very long. If you're lucky, in my opinion, on AVAX, you might get a pullback here when Bitcoin has a pullback later, and maybe you come back to 16, which would be a really big move. I'm not saying that that's like small. That's like a 40% move. But on the grand scheme of things with crypto, that's such a small move. If this is a spot position, when you have, probably more like 300% upside, okay, if not more. Now, let's talk about some other altcoins. So that's AVAX. I could ramble about that one. That's one of my favorites personally because I think it's a good combination of still cheap, relatively speaking, and it has a product. I mean, it has a real narrative that it could develop going into the cycle, which will be an institutional cycle. And I think this is one of the coins that will likely actually have real institutional adoption, meaning institutions might use Avalanche to some degree. We know they have partnerships with a few different institutions that are basically building a sandbox on top of Avalanche via a subnet. So we can go into that maybe later, but this is a real one, is what I'm trying to say. This is one to keep an eye on going into this year. Doesn't mean it's going to do the most numbers to the upside. Typically, the things that move the hardest are coins that haven't been around. And we could talk about one like TIA. One of the reasons why TIA is exploding every day, it feels like, is because it has no history. And traders like something that doesn't have a lot of sellers. There's really nobody to sell you TIA here because there's not a lot of buyers yet. Don't get me wrong, they're definitely starting to add up because this thing is up like 300%, right? But in the grand scheme of things, this is probably going to go much higher, I think, depending on how well Bitcoin does, how much capital flows in from the outside. But I'm mentioning TIA because there's going to be other coins, I think, that are more new. They don't have a huge history. And people really like to fantasize and use their imagination. Sometimes the older coins like AVAX, it actually can hurt them because people kind of have a reference point on really what it is. They kind of have an expectation for it. And they're more likely to use fundamentals for it. Whereas something like TIA, people are much less likely to use fundamentals to get to buy it. It's more about just like, oh, this is a new thing. It's hot. I want a piece of it, right? Is that dumb? Maybe. Okay, but we can go into, well, let me just show you something on that note here. This is the crypto market. So a lot of people talk about this meme, the IQ curve, and they're like, they put like, a successful trader here and a successful trader on the right end, and then all the losers are in the middle because they don't think, they don't take risk like the dumb person, and then they're not as smart to see the good opportunities like the smart person. Well, crypto is more like this, where, to really be successful, highly successful in crypto, and you may think I'm joking here, but you really do have to be kind of, not dumb, but you have to realize that this is an animals market, animal spirits, let's just say that. And you really have to grasp that to trade this, or to be able to have the confidence to hold positions that are going up parabolically, that people are not going to overcomplicate this. They're going to see things that are going up and they're just going to buy it until it doesn't work. And yes, it might be kind of stupid, but that's just how crypto is. Okay. Again, I'm not saying all crypto traders are stupid, but they certainly are almost proud of being a little bit ridiculous at times, to be trying to say that in a nice way. Okay. But this is a funny meme here. One thing I want to talk about is these kind of headlines here. You probably saw this if you're keeping up with the crypto headlines. So you have Bloomberg saying that this is the fresh start of a crypto cycle, super cycle, and Bitcoin's going to push to 500K. Just ignore this. Although I actually think that's true, but that could be 2030. It could be, who knows, right? This is just kind of clickbait, people wanting your attention. I don't disagree with it, but don't be surprised to see a lot of very over the top predictions about where the markets might be going, especially as we go higher. It's a positive feedback loop. People will start to say some pretty ridiculous things. Although again, longer term, that's not that ridiculous. One thing I want to bring attention to, because people are now looking for reasons to sell and they don't really have any obvious reasons to sell. But this could be a little bit of potential FUD, I think, going into 2024, which is Elizabeth. If you don't know who Jamie Dimon is, okay, and I'm using this tweet here because I think this is a really good summary of what I want to tell you in a second. But 6 months ago, Ryan Selkis is writing, 6 months ago, I thought our policy positioning was existentially bad in the U.S. But the timing of the Jamie Dimon, Elizabeth Warren FUD is interesting, as yesterday marked a turning point, and I've never been more confident that we'll win the U.S. Then they fight you. What does he mean by this? This is a really good account to follow, in my opinion. He's a hero in crypto. He's fighting for crypto. That's basically like what he's known for. He's really trying to fight the Washington, D.C. battle, the political battle within crypto, and I really appreciate him for that. And I think this is a really interesting statement, because I think he gets it more than anybody else that we are at then they fight you phase of crypto adoption. So when I got into crypto in 2015, okay, nobody, and I mean almost nobody, thought buying crypto was a good idea. And the traditional media was like, laughed at it. like internet money, like it's not worth anything. You guys are silly. Let's move on. And then it went up quite a bit in 2017 into 2018, and then they started kind of taking it a little bit more serious, and they tried to ban it a few times. That didn't work. And then, we had a huge bear market, and then we had we had the rally last year. And I think what people naturally think now is, oh, we have already won. BlackRock is they're going to have their ETF, and everything's good now. But I think he realizes it, and I believe it too, that this is a fight here. This is really, they're not done yet. The matrix, the bureaucratic institutions do not like Bitcoin. They do not like crypto. This is a fact because crypto was created to replace them. Okay? If anybody says that Bitcoin was created for anything other than that, they're wrong. Bitcoin was created to be an alternative to the financial system. They do not like that. And he's mentioning Jamie Dimon here. And the reason why he's mentioning Jamie Dimon is because Jamie Dimon was in a hearing for the U.S. Senate. I guess it was some kind of financial committee hearing. And in that hearing, and by the way, that was today or yesterday, but I think it was today, he said that basically, he would ban Bitcoin if he was the government. And he gave these reasons for why he would ban it. And I think people need to understand that he is not the only one that believes that. There are people who absolutely are smart enough to realize that Bitcoin is not in their best interest unless they adapt and evolve and change with it. And some people do not want to do that. They already have power. They don't want to lose power or jeopardize their power. And that is banks, for example. Now, I actually think that banks have a lot to gain from Bitcoin if they're smart enough to adapt and evolve blockchain technology in general, but many of them will choose not to do that and to fight it. So do not be surprised if you start to see the bureaucratic machine start throwing back some blows. Okay? And this is Jamie Dimon. I should probably mention who he is. He is the CEO, if you didn't know, of JP Morgan. Okay, he doesn't like Bitcoin. He's been saying that for a while now. And also Elizabeth Warren. Okay, Elizabeth Warren, if you don't know who she is, she's pretty much like crypto enemy number one when it comes to the Biden administration, or really just that bureaucratic system in general. Okay, I don't think she's actually part of the Biden administration, but she's very much aligned with this anti-crypto lobby that is that's in Washington, D.C., okay? So I'm not going to spend too much time on this, but I'm mentioning this to say this is how you get your next FUD. This is probably what will scare people later, is that you'll get some kind of headline that the government or some politicians are trying to do something to stop crypto. They're not done yet, in my opinion, in terms of trying to control they aren't done with the fight of trying to maintain these legacy bureaucratic institutions that are failing. Okay, a dying person doesn't want to die. They will fight to survive if they can. That is what's happening with these antiquated institutions, and one of them is the financial system. It's an old, outdated system that needs updating, and it's not going to want to change, okay, easily. It's going to kick and scream along the way, and that's what this is, in my opinion. Ultimately, crypto wins because you can't stop it, and it's going to spread like it's spreading like a wildfire, like a virus outside of the United States borders. It cannot be controlled. And eventually politicians will realize that. People in banks will realize that, and they'll say, okay, it's like the internet. We better jump in. We better adapt, or else. Okay? You would have not been a wise person to have said, I'm just going to ignore the internet and the iPhone and just, I'm going to fight that. Yeah. How would that have worked for you if you were trying to build a business over the last 20 years? It's very much the same way when it comes to the financial system. Adapt or be left behind. That is going to be the point that I think many of the influential people within finance will eventually, I think they're starting to figure it out now, they will eventually come to that conclusion. Now, let's move on to something else. ETH. I want to finish this video off. Actually, we're going to go to equities after this, but I want to talk about ETH here because I think I think it's really important to bring something up with ETH, and that is it's been lagging, dragging behind Bitcoin for quite some time. I'm going to show you a chart here to illustrate really the state of Ethereum. Ethereum right now is currently wrecked versus Bitcoin. And if you don't know what that means, it means we're looking at the price of Ethereum versus Bitcoin and not the dollar. It's important to look at this because this really shows you its strength, right? Obviously, Ethereum is going to go up versus the dollar over time. But if it's not going up versus Bitcoin, that's not good because you could have just held Bitcoin, right? And there's a reason for this, I think. It's happened in the past. But I think you are approaching the bottom of this chart. And once this, and I'm not sure if that's here, if that's a little bit lower, but once you start to see this turn around, I really believe that this is going to be really the signal for ETH, that it is now going to take the baton and finish the race. Because historically, ETH runs versus Bitcoin after Bitcoin has already kind of really, starts the race, has already had a big move up versus ETH. And then Bitcoin kind of consolidates and then like money flows from Bitcoin into ETH. I'm sorry if I'm not explaining that correctly, but it's rotations. That's what I'm trying to get into. And the way that you time these rotations, Bitcoin capital into ETH, is ETH BTC. If you start to see this flip around, that's going to be a great signal for ETH. And I actually think that this is the time to start building it, because I don't think it's going to go down versus a dollar. It might lag Bitcoin a bit. But if you look at this, it's already established now price above this huge breakout level, which was this 2100 level roughly. And I think your risk reward is better than Bitcoin, a lot better actually. So I think for ETH, you're risking maybe like 10% here. I don't think it's going to pull back much, even if Bitcoin pulls back. That is an enormous support level. So 15%, and then the upside, I don't even know what the upside would be, but at least, somewhere around 3,000, I would think, before it would have any kind of meaningful pullback. But again, I don't know if you're going to see below 2,000 ever again. As crazy as that might sound, it might be that you never see that again. Whereas with Bitcoin, and maybe you do, right? Maybe you get some kind of global financial collapse, and at the end of the world's tomorrow. Okay, yeah, then we're going a lot lower, right? You should be targeting 600 at that point. But if we're in this global liquidity cycle going into 2025, and Bitcoin, is able to hold, somewhere, I'm not so sure it would even come back to 30K, but let's just say 35 or something like that. Its risk reward is not as good as ETH. I think it could easily have a 20% dip. And then the upside, yeah, it could be quite a bit higher, but I think you get what I'm saying. ETH has a huge level of support very close to where it is now, meaning if you were to get a pullback, you have some protection underneath you and a lot of white space. So I'm expecting that to turn around over the next few weeks. And if you didn't know, another area or another point of confluence here outside of the technicals is ETH is also likely to have an ETF passed. Now, I'm not so sure that it's going to be passed the same time Bitcoin's ETF will be passed, but people have been applying for a spot Bitcoin ETF, and BlackRock is one of them. All right, guys, I think that's all we're going to cover today. And until next time, happy hunting, friends.
Hey, thanks for watching. Be sure to like and subscribe to our channel if you'd like more updates like this, and let us know in the comments, what do you think about today's video and DeFiancy update and insight? Also, make sure that you join our Discord, our free community chat, where we discuss things like this, what's going on in real time. Typically, our Discord community is the first to know what's happening, and we would love to see you there. Check the link in the description. And until then, we'll see you in the next DeFiancy Insight video. Bye for now.